can't do that. Thanks. Brandon, how are you, buddy? Feels good to be back in the film room, doesn't it? And especially feels great when nothing bad has happened over the last 24 hours, right?
I love being in the film room. I love Kentucky basketball. I don't love just spiraling negativity amongst Big Blue Nation, some of which I actually even agree with this time around.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, we were kind of negative the last time we talked. I feel like I don't want to be like this crazy negative again. But you asked the question. So here we are. Like things could be going better. I wish we had more really good players on the roster. We're here to talk
Same.
about one of the new players on the roster that does have some upside potential of being pretty exciting, but also probably doesn't move the needle towards a national championship. But anyway, yeah. How are you, Zach? Nobody ever asked how you are. How are you?
Good. Yesterday was definitely an interesting day to be working on this beat, that's for sure. So glad that is all over, though. I will tell you, I am so absolutely relieved that the entire Tyron Stokes saga is over. I was just ready for that to be done with. I will say that the commitment ceremony or announcement was absolutely hilarious, unintentionally hilarious yesterday on ESPN. Nothing to do with Tyron, with just the whole production of it was hilarious. And then, yeah, the aftermath of how it all kind of boiled into, BBN's blood, and it did not. People were not happy, and probably still aren't too happy about it. And Kentucky also got a commitment.
Might still be talking about how he coached
Kenny Smith
as
is
11-year-old.
Yes, man. Nobody loves Kenny Smith more than Kenny Smith. That is entirely sure, or for sure. So, and Kentucky got a commitment 45 minutes before Tyron Stokes picked Kansas as well. So Justin McBride, James Madison transfer forward. There will be a Zoom action coming up very soon with him. If not the end of this week, like early next week, we'll just see kind of how we're at watching film and schedules and all that. But that's not who we're here to talk about. Here today, Brandon Ramsey at 2:23 on Wednesday, April 29th, is Ousmane. And there's when you watch all the video and listen to people talk and say his name, there are two different ways they say his last name. Ndiaye, they like kind of pronounce it with a G, Ndiaye, or Ndiaye, and they just kind of pronounce it with just the big D. Whoa, sorry. Yep. Ndiaye. One of those two. So we'll just kind of go back and forth with that. I also don't know how it's properly spelled either, if you're supposed to have the apostrophe or not. UK is using the apostrophe. FIBA and his professional team aren't. So I don't even know how you're supposed to properly say this guy's name. I'm sure we'll figure all that out once he actually gets here. But he is still playing currently over in the LBA, which is
2 games
Italy's
left.
Top. Yes, and that's just in the regular season. They can still make the playoffs, actually. I've kind of gone through their standings. So they have like it's a 16 or even 15 team league. The top 8 teams make the postseason, and they are currently 9th, and they trail by 4 points. So if it's the soccer system that I'm used to, if they get 2 wins and then maybe some help from the teams above them, they will make the playoffs. If they don't, I don't know if they have like an extra, all those other European leagues have like other smaller tournaments that can come after or before. So I'm not sure if they lose these next 2 games over the next couple of weeks, then he just is done and like he can come to the United States. I don't know how any of that works, but regardless, that is not really important, because what we're here to do is break down the film on our man Ousmane, who is 22 years old, turned 22, and I think it was March. So I don't know what that's going to mean for his, is he going to be a junior when he gets here, a senior with the whole 5 and 5 rule? Like, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But he is 22 years old, just turning. He says 6'11" forward. I think the easiest way to kind of describe him, just like from a general scouting report, is long and athletic, first and foremost. Runs the floor well, like wants to get up and down, wants to be athletic, wants to use his body to his advantage. Loves the deep ball. Big fan of shooting threes. Whether or not he makes them is kind of still up to be determined a little bit, but a very like audacious 3-point shooter. Like will fire up just some of the craziest, deepest turnaround fadeaways that you will ever see from a kid that's 6'11", kind of built like he is. And he's a big dude. So I think the physicality will definitely help him coming over here. So for some more minor background notes from on him, there's been other people, people that actually follow European basketball who have talked about him recently in recent days, gone on American podcasts and talk shows. I think even Alan Cutler might have had, I think it was, or Irene Demir went on his and he was like kind of pumping the brakes, being cautious, like, hey, if this kid is not a lottery pick, like let's kind of make that clear first and foremost. And I think that's almost kind of obvious, but I feel like it needs to be said because Njae did try to go into the NBA draft in 2023. He ultimately pulled his name out, stuck in the draft in 2025, and was not drafted. He spent, I think it was the last 2 seasons before the current one in the LBA. He was playing in the ACB, which is the Spanish league's top league. And then, Brandon, you probably agree with this as well. The ACB is probably the number 2 league in the world behind the NBA in terms of just overall talent, or at least it's up there. Like think EuroLeague type talent. Like that's like a lot of those teams play in there. And didn't put up like crazy numbers while he was there, but was a little bit younger, playing against better competition. The LBA is probably maybe a tier below where the Spanish league is. And once he got there, he really started to blossom, started to really kind of get his feet under him a little bit. 10 points a game, 6-7 rebounds a game. Gosh, I'm just really going all in on the memes by accident today. I think 41-ish% from the field, 30-ish% from three. Like I said, he shoots more threes than he does twos right now. He's actually quite efficient when he does shoot twos, but the threes, he really loves to fire those up. So, Brandon, is there any other just like little background things you want to mention about Njae before we kind of dive into the actual film here?
No, I think that the main thing, just to sort of build the context for Njae, is that the level of basketball that he's playing at is really, really high. You had an article a week or so ago, Zach, and you linked an interesting article from one of these international scouts that writes for No Ceilings, I think.
No Ceilings, big time NBA platform here.
And it like, I wish that he almost did too good of a job breaking it down, because I wish that he didn't tear it out between the summer league and the playoffs, because then it kind of like waters down the rankings a little bit. But
right,
this guy has played in two of probably the 3 best international leagues in the past, in the Spanish ACB league and Euro League, and then now the LBA is probably more like,
it was 13th in that ranking you're referring to, but 13th was like, the G League was above there. NBA Summer, like he literally broke it down by like NBA, and it was regular season, NBA playoffs, and
it was also quite a bit ahead of the SEC, which was the top,
which was like 25th, I think, or something like that. That was the highest NCAA team, NCAA conference.
So you're looking at a guy that's playing, at least in one person's opinion, and I think in a lot of international scouts and even NBA scouts' opinions, he's playing at a higher level than NCAA college basketball across the board. And he played at an even higher level when he was a couple years younger and was kind of struggling to get his footing. Now maybe he found a level more comfortable to him, plus got a year older, and he's starting to have some success now in a really good league. So I think when you look at somebody like him, and I think the other contextual point is that this is certainly a tier, if not 2 tiers above, like the Adriatic League where Andrej Jelovic came in.
Yes, so I was going to mention that. Good call.
If you're just looking at how numbers might translate, like I think it's fair to look at numbers that Ousmane Njae puts up in the LBA and think he might be able to put up those numbers next year at Kentucky. Now, do those numbers like jump off the page and excite us to no end, averaging 10 points and 6.7 rebounds? No, not necessarily. Like we're going to be pretty honest and frank, I think, throughout this episode. Like, do I think this is a guy that's going to come in and move the needle towards a national championship? No. Do I think he's a solid player that maybe is even better than Andrej Jelovic as your starting 4-man last year? Yes, I think that is possible. So to kind of build the context as we get into the highlights, because quite frankly, his highlight package looks incredibly good because he's 6'11" and he's spraying.
Well, some of these shots he hits, you're like.
But I think some of that context kind of helps paint the picture of what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, so like you said, maybe I think the Adriatic League in the rankings we were referring to, I said the LBA was 13th, the ACB was 6th. I think the Adriatic League was like 20th or something like that, if I remember off the top of my head. So, it's probably not smart to like just use that as like a black and white comparison to say like, okay, well, he put up these numbers in the 13th league, so when he goes down to the 25th league in the SEC, he should, like, that's just not exactly how it works necessarily. Right. I will say, like, he played in there's not much full game film on him out there, but if you are someone out there that wants to go and watch full games of him, there was 3 games from back in February on the FIBA's YouTube account where he played for Senegal in the 2027 World Cup African qualifiers. He played 3 games. So I combed through some of those. And I will say he shot 1 for 19 from 3 in those. In those 3 games, had 1 total assist, 1 total steal, 1 total block. So there are some just weird kind of, stats that you look at there. I will say that, like, when I was watching, I thought he actually was like a pretty decent playmaker and like could show the ability to pass like out of pick and rolls, or like if he caught the ball out of a pick and roll, he could pass it out quick. His teammates just didn't knock down shots. So I think there's a little bit of context there that is missing in terms of those just 3 games, like small sample size stats there. But he does shoot some crazy shots. So the 1 for 19 look does not kind of, that doesn't surprise me too much at all. I will say, like, is he a guy that we should pencil in as the starting power forward? As the roster is currently constructed, I would say probably. Is he? I would say that's probably a good idea. Is like, this guy's probably going to be your starting for next season, next to Malachi Moreno. So you're going to want him to shoot because you kind of need shooters in the starting lineup right now. But yeah, so that's some good context there on Njae. He's been on the radar for a while as well. Like, I think ESPN had an article on him like in 2016, 2017, when he was real young, talking about kind of him being a potential up-and-comer, things like that. So hasn't quite lived up to being, a first-round NBA talent, but has made a significant development. Like, he's actually he's one of 5 candidates for the best under 22-year-old player award in his league. And that league also has Kyle Wiltshire and Nate Sestina, which is just kind of funny to think about. So, if you are trying to look for some comparisons, like, Wiltshire and Sestina are really good pro players. So like that's a good league for them. So like, obviously Sestina and Kyle Wiltshire are 30, but if they came over and were putting up, came over and played in the SEC, they would start dominating as well. So, but that's kind of irrelevant. So let's go ahead and stop yammering here, Brandon. Let's get into the film. I'm going to go ahead and pull up, so we're using a video from Armand Jovic, who is kind of like a pretty recognizable international scout. He's got like a big Twitter account. I think he's the one that has kind of put together like a highlight package on Twitter and things like that. He also has a 5-minute video on YouTube that we're going to look at here today. And we've just kind of plucked a handful of clips from that we're going to kind of come over here or just roll through. Cause like we said, there's not much game film out there. There's not much information. Like, there's no advanced stats. There's no synergy account for, Vinoli Crema over in Italy that Brandon can kind of tap into. So a lot of this is just kind of going off what we have available. Because I'll be perfectly honest, I have no idea how this kid is going to translate to Kentucky. Absolutely zero, to be perfectly honest. Like, and I think saying that we have like a definitive expectation for him is just kind of talking to talk, because I think it's just going to be real, especially after how Yelovich went last season. It's like, you just don't really know exactly how this is all going to go. But Brandon, I'm going to go ahead and let some of your clips play here. I believe all 3 of your clips are going to go back in a row here. So actually, what I'm going to do here is let all 3 of your clips play. I'll kind of talk over them for a second. I didn't make this video, so I'm not going to screw it up like I did last time with the last Zoom action we did. And then I'll let your coaching brain go and talk after that. So let's go ahead and play them here. So immediately, the first thing you're going to notice about Njae is loves to run the floor, runs the floor well, really long athletic. So we got right immediately there, we've got back-to-back fast break dunks for him, where he's just long, athletic, and is able to get himself to the rim pretty easily when he's got a full head of steam. And then we're going to go into the third play here, which is a pick and roll, or pick and pop, I should say, 3-pointer for him. And that is probably the easiest 3-point look you will see in this entire 5-minute video package of him as well. And at some point, I'll let the video play, and you can see just some of the insane 3-point shot attempts this guy takes. And they obviously all go in this video. But Brandon, what do you like about these 3 plays? How do you is this things you see that are easily translatable to the college level? Just why did you pick these 3 plays here to get us started?
Yeah, it's what I always talk about. Like when I'm watching film on these guys, whether it's a transfer, whether it's an international prospect, whether it's a high school prospect, I like to see things where I can be like, boy, I can see that exact highlight or that exact play happening at Kentucky next season. And if you let this entire 5-minute highlight roll, there's going to be plenty of it that to me is non-translatable to Kentucky. Like, Coach Pope isn't going to let this guy shoot turn around, step back 27-footers. He's not going to let him shoot, Dirk Nowitzki fadeaways. But some of the things that we just showed in those 3 clips, I think, are very much translatable. He is an elite athlete. He runs the floor like a gazelle. He's 6'11". He's bouncy vertically. So, like, I can see Alex Wilkins leading the fast break and throwing it up to him. I can see Zoom Diallo and him kind of running in a 2-on-1 and dishing it off to him where he can go up and dunk it over people. I can see Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins, who were really high usage pick and roll ball handlers last season per synergy. I can see them hitting him on the pick and pop there. And what I really liked, if you wouldn't mind, go back to that pick and pop clip. I just want to kind of slow it down a little bit and show. I love how as soon as he kind of fades to the wing here, look at how his hands are ready. Like I really love how like his feet are under control and his hands are ready. That was a very like smooth veteran pop for him, and a guy that is ready to have the ball. He wants the ball. He wants to shoot these shots. And I think these are the ones that are translatable. Like he's going to make open inside out catch and shoot threes. He's going to make the pick and pop or the slip to pop, which I think there's a clip of that coming up at some point in these 5 minutes. Like those are the threes he's going to make. He's going to make some transition threes. He's not going to make the ones where he's crossing dudes up. He's not going to make the ones where he's, doing some weird turnaround from 3-point range. But I do think that the athleticism absolutely translates. The size absolutely translates. And it's one of the points that we've talked about. At least I've talked about it on this show several times. I've talked about it on Twitter, on different shows, whatever it may be. I am and remain and was a fan this offseason of kind of taking some swings and going after high risk, high reward talent, because we know what has happened the last 2 years isn't working. Like if Coach Pope of Kentucky go to the Sweet 16, the Elite or the round of 32, probably ain't going to see a year 4. So like, let's take some swings. I think this guy is a perfect example of a high risk, high reward sort of guy. Like his floor is probably really low. Like his floor is a guy that like really can't play in the games probably. But his ceiling is a guy that comes in and is like, holy cow, we just got ourselves an NBA prospect. This guy comes in and shoots 35% from 3, makes 53s. We're all super excited and think he's a really good player. So I'm kind of fine with that to some extent. Like I don't need more guys who help us get 8th in the SEC. I don't need more guys that help us get to the round of 32. Like give me a higher level of variance, quite frankly, where, hey, maybe this guy helps you get to the Final Four, but also he might mean that you missed the tournament. And like, I know that's sort of doom and gloom and not very exciting to talk about on April 29th, but I am kind of cool with getting the shot making upside. And I think that the shot making upside of this guy is real. Like if you rein in the shot selection, yeah, absolutely. If you rein in the shot selection a little bit, you get him to take the good open threes that are created for him. I mean, the guy has rattled off. I mean, he's made 43 threes in 27 games. Again, it's kind of like what I talked about with Alex Wilkins. I mean, I become less concerned about the percentage if you can make that sort of a volume. So if this guy comes in and can make 33 to 35% and makes 53s, like I'm going to really like him. But if he's, unable to guard, if he's unable to handle the ball, if he takes bad shots, if he just doesn't really fit into the system, probably going to find himself on the bench quite a lot, quite frankly. So there is a lot of variance, like Zach said. I think if either one of us were to try to sit here and be like, I have a super strong opinion of what his role is going to be, we would just be sort of making it up. But I think the way I outlined it is probably the most honest way to look at it is, yeah, I could see him coming in and being a pretty darn good player, being an improvement from what we had last year at the 4. I could also see him more or less not playing in the basketball games. And it's just really hard to tell with some of these international guys, especially guys that play the way that he plays. It's a little concerning that there's not very many clips of him inside the 3-point line. I don't love that from
if
my
they are the Dirk shot.
Yeah, and those just aren't gonna, those aren't gonna happen. He did rebound. Man, his rebounding numbers are pretty impressive, honestly. So I do like that. And just with the lack of full game footage, I just don't have a great feel for what he is really as a defender. But just looking at the statistics, it doesn't seem like he's probably great in that realm. But I would say I am genuinely excited about two things: being 6'11" and super athletic, and upside as a shot maker. I think the highlights show that those two things are real. And then we're just gonna have to wait and see how they translate once he gets here.
Yeah, on the defense, like he's got more steals than blocks in the LBA. But like if you put them together, he's at like 1.6 stocks per game, which is not bad. But like, especially when I was watching some of those FIBA games, like you just don't really see him much on defense. Maybe some of that is just, he's just playing off ball a lot. But like you said, really good at grabbing defensive rebounds, ending plays, finishing off defensive plays. That's important. I do have like, if I'm comparing it to Yelovich last year, because like when we watched Yelovich's film and his tape, like the 3-point shots he took in the Adriatic League were pretty much the same 3-point shots he was taking in the SEC, and his percentages were, I think he was 30% in both league, like in the Adriatic League and then at UK. So this kid Ousmane is 30% in the LBA, but he's taking shots that he's not like 50% of the shots that he's taken. He's just not going to take at Kentucky. And if he does, like Mark Pope's just not going to play him because you can't have him just go out there and shoot some of these ridiculous ones. And there was a couple earlier, like that I showed where he's just like turning around, spinning, fading, like just really tough shots that I don't know if he'll have the same green light for. But like right there, a catch and shoot from the corner, like if he can get those looks consistently, like it does seem like he has a pretty decent pull-up jumper on him. Like if he gets himself into catch and shoot situations or where he can just get a couple dribbles and then pull it up, like that's where he can shoot better. So if his shot diet just changes when he gets to Kentucky, which just didn't happen with Yelovich because he's just not nearly the athlete, like he couldn't take some of these crazy threes that Njai is. And it's kind of pointless to compare the two anyways. Or well, maybe it's not, honestly. I don't know, Brandon, you might feel differently about that because they're kind of different players, but similar leagues at the old spot, similar positional styles and stuff. But I do have, you can kind of talk yourself into him shooting better than 30% in the SEC just because he won't be taking some of the most, deep NBA range turnarounds. Like he's going to have, ideally playing with Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins puts this guy in a spot where he's not having to fade away and turn around, where he can get himself into looks like that right there, where he's just picking and popping or, cutting along the baseline, because other fours are not going to like to guard this guy, especially bigger fours in the SEC. Like the physicality, I'm sure will be interesting to see how that kind of translates, but he's going to be faster than and more athletic than a lot of these fours. So he can probably wear them down just by getting up and down the floor, running along the baseline, trying to just free himself up a little bit. So at least in that regard, I can kind of talk myself into maybe him being a little bit better 3-point shooter coming over. But that's also all he's done. He's like, ever since he's been playing professionally, or at least the last 3 seasons, like his per 36 numbers, he's shooting 5 or 6 threes a game, no matter what league he's in, whether that's the ACB or the LBA. So that's, like you said, Brandon, like you're not seeing a lot of shots inside that, like you're not seeing him really put the ball on the floor and like dribbling his way in for layups. Like he's either shooting threes, pulling up on the like right inside the arc, or dunking the ball. And maybe that's all he needs to do.
He's
like
a
maybe
6'11" jump shooter.
Yeah, and maybe he doesn't need to be a guy. You want to listen to some tranquil jazz while we're doing this here? I just got some ambience.
Might make us all feel better.
Yeah, it might actually. So, his how he approaches his usage and all that at Kentucky will probably be a little bit different, and what he actually does with the ball in his hands will be different at Kentucky than it is over either with his FIBA team with the Senegal or in the LBA. So, but anything else you want to touch on with the plays that we have kind of? I mean, we've talked about 100 plays at this point, but anything else you want to touch on with some of the 3 plays that you had brought up?
No, I don't think so. We can go ahead and roll right into what you had loaded up.
Yeah, let's do it. So I've got a couple here. This is probably it's this next one here. This is probably my favorite clip. This is just pure athleticism, just being the most athletic guy on the floor. He's going to do things like this at Kentucky. We're like, oh my gosh, like this guy can be, these are the plays that can give you a little bit of hope. Like a really tough up and under here. Like this is actually the one, like I kind of just contradicted myself. I said you don't see him putting it on the floor too much and getting to the rim, and here he does it right here. But I will say this is probably one of the 1 or 2 plays.
It's like the one layup he shoots in the highlights.
Yeah. But it's a really nice play. Like there'll be times where Alex Wilkins or Zoom Diallo is driving right in here, kick it out to Ousmane in the corner, pump fake, jab step, get your defender off kilter, and then you're just a free lane to the rim here. Beautiful up and under. Like for anyone at 6'11", that's a really tough shot to make. So I was really impressed to see that one. Any big takes on that type of play there, just his athleticism in general, Brandon?
I think this is sort of what his game is right now, is that like he's a highlight reel, and you just kind of have to wonder again that's part of what gives me pause of him coming here is like, okay, we we have a highlight film to go off of. We also have statistics that aren't outstanding, especially kind of the efficiency numbers. So when you blend the two, it tells me, okay, well, yeah, the statistics are, super fun and sexy and exciting. But if you sat there and kind of then also put together a highlight of his misses and his turnovers and all these other things, then you start to, really start to get a little concerned about how he would translate. But yeah, he absolutely has that upside potential, and maybe what you if you're kind of grasping at the straws of optimism, then I think you look at what we talked about a little bit earlier of when he was 19, 20, 21, he was playing in literally one of, if not the best international league in the world. He took a little bit of a step down and became what he is this year, which is a very serviceable player, averaging 10
Yeah.
points and 6.7 rebounds. Well, to hear a lot of international people talk, he's technically going to be taking another step down to go from where he is now to the SEC. So maybe there is room for some growth there. And all of a sudden, he's not playing against 30-year-olds and former NBA players and all these different things. And things maybe operate a little bit easier for him, or the game slows down for him a little bit. Or as you mentioned, he kind of improves that shot diet. So that there are reasons for optimism. I think there's just also reasons for skepticism, and we're gonna kind of keep playing that game each time we stop and talk about it.
Well, and with the league comparison stuff, like the more NIL becomes a thing, just the better college basketball is getting too. So, the college basketball in general is just getting better and better and more talented and more talented because you're able to bring in guys like this from overseas leagues or get guys like, guys that would normally, like Thomas Haug, would have easily been a first round pick in the NBA, and he's coming back to make $1 billion at Florida. So that's going to continue to happen. And, so he's taking a step down, but it's not like he's going to the NCAA or the SEC what it was 10 years ago when it was bad. Like the SEC is really good all around. So, we'll see how exactly or what that exact drop off is from that league to the SEC. But yeah, I mean, there's reasons to believe that it can translate, and then there's reasons to believe that it can't. So, one thing I just want to stress again is like this kid, he's not a lottery pick. Like I've seen some takes like that from Americans that have like tried to scout him, and that's just not what's going to happen. If he was going to be a lottery pick, he probably would have. He would already be that at this point because he's already 22. How much better can he get in one season? From now going to Kentucky. I don't know, but maybe he doesn't have to be so much better. He just needs to be playing against worse competition, and at least that should be a little bit more of the case, having to not play against, like you said, like 30-year-olds and things like that. So, but I'm going to go ahead and slide up here to our next couple plays. Because these are like, I think I got back-to-back plays here. And these are kind of just things that you can see translate a little bit better. That's why I picked them, or at least translate to college a little bit easier. There's back-to-back pull-ups here. Like just a simple, you've got the shot right here. Like I can see him taking this shot at Kentucky. Like these are the shots that I feel like we wanted guys to take more of last year, but they just kind of wouldn't, or like they didn't have the guys to do that. You've got an advantage here. This is a 4-on-3 essentially. You've got, even if you miss that shot, well, the guy at the top there didn't cave in, but you could potentially get an offensive rebound. Like I'm perfectly okay with that type of shot. That's the shot I could see translating. That's the shot I'm going to want him taking in Kentucky, is the pull up threes when he's got no one on him. And then this one right here is just an easy, like, let's just do a little dribble move to get around my defender, a little stutter step, and then we're going to go into just an easy pull up right here over my defender. He always fades on his jump shots as well. I don't know, like that was kind of something Colin Chandler did as well, and I think they were trying to get rid of that out of his game, and it never really happened. So I don't know, like I'm not a shooting coach. I don't know what the correct way, like, how much you should fade or if you shouldn't fade, things like that. But he does fade on a lot of his jump shots. I don't know if you've noticed that as well, Brandon, but that's an easy shot I could see translate right there. The one thing that is kind of like, okay, well, why didn't you just go in here and try and dunk on the guy? Like I don't know if there's like, if you have a strong opinion on that, if that really matters at all. Like there might be another play in this clip or in this highlight package where he does that, where he just goes in and tries to dunk on a guy. But he saw his spot here. I think that's the spot he likes, just from looking at some of the clips, is he likes this little mid-range pull up. Boy, could you imagine? We might be shooting. What was the team that Kentucky played last season that was just was that Ole Miss? I think that all they did was shoot mid-range jumpers.
Yes.
I really hope that is not what this team turns into, to be perfectly honest with you, even if they're good at it, because man, those games can get ugly in a hurry. But I digress here. So those are nice, pretty pull up jumpers that I can just see translating at Kentucky. Brandon, your thoughts on just his pull up game and ability to kind of knock down? Oh yes, more Jazz. Let's go. Just knock down shots like that.
It's so much of it is just you don't see a lot of 6'11" guys with that sort of a game, like with those skills in their bag, quite frankly. Like him handling the ball in transition and shooting a pull up three like he's a guard isn't something you see every day. That one clip that we showed where he's almost like coming off of a floppy action and then just sets his feet like that stuff. Like Kentucky was running that for Colin Chandler last year. Now you have a 6'11" Njai coming off that to make a shot. Or there's a clip in here of him having like a big left to right crossover. Like he gets his shoulders low, he dips his hips, he gets out of his move and makes a pull up three. And yes, some of those things, again, how much of it is he going to be allowed to do or asked to do at Kentucky? That remains to be seen. But boy, I'd rather him have it in his bag than not have it in his bag. And between the athleticism at his size, with the way he moves at his size, with the way he shoots it at his size, there are just a lot of things you kind of start ticking off. Like, man, there's not a ton of 6'11" dudes that have some of these skills. And again, if it all kind of works out for him at Kentucky, it's a guy that you could really see thriving in a role and having some success with. There's just so many unknowns sort of at the outskirts of his game that it's really hard to nail down an exact opinion of what to expect from him next season.
Yeah, that's why I feel like we haven't been like too positive or too negative with what we're talking about with him, because like we said off top, like we don't really know. And especially with how Yelovich went last season, like I'm just a little gun shy on trying to project how these kids are going to play. Yelovich ended up starting last season, but I feel like we definitely had higher expectations for him and what he was actually going to do last season. So, I mean, look at that shot right there. Like, I mean, who on last season, like, is Yelovich doing that? No, like no one on last season's team is even attempting shots like that. So, yeah, I have no idea how he's going to translate. I think if you watch this highlight package, you're like, holy moly, like this kid can just do things. And I will say, like, the overall roster construction compared to last season is Pope is getting guys that just can do things that no one on last season's team could do. Like with Wilkins and Diallo, you're getting guys that can dribble and pass really well. With Njai, you're getting just a athletic monster, like a unique unicorn-esque type player who can step out and shoot these step back threes and wants to run the floor and dunk. And I can see a world where that all kind of works, because I can see, like we've talked about, you can see Alex Wilkins and Zoom Diallo find an Njai for lobs and corner threes and things like that. You can see all that kind of pretty easily. I'm interested, Brandon, if you have any kind of overwhelming thoughts on how he'll play with Malachi. Like, I do think that Pope has stressed that he wants to do more with Malachi offensively, like maybe get more back a little bit more to the zoom action plays that they were running, but also just have him at the top of the key, kind of operating the offense a little bit more. I don't think that's what they'll try and do with Njai. I haven't, at least from the film we've watched, that's not really like a role that he's going to play. But how do you think that Njai could at least play off of that stuff, and maybe where spacing could be a little bit tight with Zoom and Alex Wilkins out there? Have you even thought that far ahead yet, or anything to add to it?
I think that's where he could really start to excel again. Anytime you're able to get Njai in space on the perimeter, I think that's where he's going to thrive. And if you play more of that offense through the 5-man, through Malachi, where Njai's going to the corner to set a down screen into some zoom action for Diallo, and Diallo comes off, maybe he curls it, and Njai steps back and he's open for a three. Like, I can see that. I can see that same exact thing happening. Njai catching it and attacking a closeout and going and dunking on somebody. I can see Njai coming off of the zoom action screen and maybe, getting a handoff and settling behind and shooting it. Like, those are the things with how agile he is on the perimeter and some of the footwork that he's flashed on film. Like, I do think you can use him both as a screener and as a cutter in a lot of the zoom action stuff offensively out on the perimeter. So that is very encouraging. And I think the more open threes that you can get him this season, probably the better for his game. So yeah, I think if you do turn the keys over to Malachi Moreno a little bit more and be that hub of the offense at the 5 at the top of the key, I think that's really good actually for the skill set that Njae brings to the table for Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see how that would mesh with just Alex Wilkins and Zoom Diallo being high on ball guys. Like what do they do? How often can you actually make Malachi be that guy to operate a little bit more, knowing that you've got these two ball dominant guys. But I will say, like, it should be easier for Njae to get looks at Kentucky, just because like he doesn't, from all the stuff that we were showing here, like he's best when he's catching and shooting, or playing in space, playing in transition. So he's not a guy that like has to have the ball and get inside the lane to like manufacture himself points like in the mid range or passing other guys. Like he's a good complementary piece in the fact that he can probably play well off of guys that are really good at passing the ball. So I can see that translating well. And I will say, like, I think it was Captain Crash. He was like, "Be bold, Zach," in the comments here, something like that, like trying to get me to say one way or the other if he's going to be good or not here. I mean, I'm more inclined to believe that he's going to be good at Kentucky. Like I feel good right now saying that he'll be more productive than Andrea Jelovich was. And maybe that's just because we saw how it all went with Jelovich, and he just obviously didn't live up to expectations. And that's not necessarily a high bar to reach either. But if he is better than Jelovich, Jelovich was the starting forward to end the season. So if Njae is better than Jelovich, then boom, you've pretty much upgraded nearly all of at least 4 of your 5 starting spots just through the offseason, with Malachi getting better just from year over year, Wilkins and Diallo, and then Njae over Jelovich. So we'll see. I'm still interested to see how that 3 spot goes. Like, Justin McBride, I don't think he'll be the 3. I think you could probably pencil him in as the 4, backup 4. Like he might play as many minutes as Njae does. I'll dive into the film. We'll both dive into the film on him a little bit more over the coming days before we do a Zoom action. But yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be fun. Like, I think this team's just going to be a lot more fun to watch because they're going to be more exciting, more high flying, more highlights. Will that translate to postseason success and 25 wins? I have genuinely no idea. But Brandon, are there any other big takeaways you've got on Njae that you haven't really mentioned? We're going to start to wind down here a little bit.
Yeah, my final take is, and you said it essentially as well, but I'll double down on it because I kind of have mentioned this with each of these Zoom action episodes as we go player by player, because it's been true. I do think this is kind of another 1-for-1 upgrade at his position, and I think we'll get to it with McBride, but I think that Jelovich and Diabate at the 4, and now having Njae and McBride at the 4, that is an upgrade for your 4 spot. Again, we've talked about Malachi Moreno. Obviously, I'm assuming sophomore Malachi is greater than freshman Malachi. In the backcourt, I really think that you've upgraded with Diallo and Wilkins compared to what you had in Aberdeen and Chandler. Now, the big question remains, all right, we had Otega Owe. He was the best player on last year's team. What in the heck do we do there? Like we still kind of need that star, that stud. I think that Diallo and Wilkins can inch towards that, but they're also being asked to do a lot of other things in terms of playmaking and all that. So I wish you could plug in that. I hate to even say his name, but the Tyron Stokes. That would be yeah. I mean, he's the one that's left in that, and that's what is scary at this point is that, like, again, we talked about it even with Donnie Freeman, how like it wasn't really about Donnie Freeman, it was about kind of the idea of missing out on him. A little bit same deal with Tyron. So it's like if you want to hear Brandon Ramsey be bold about something real quick, and I'm working myself up as we talk about, like, it, given a world where there were other options, and I say this with 10 toes on the ground, I would not want Tyron Stokes within 100 feet of our basketball program. Like, I mean,
both been vocal on that. Yeah.
I don't want to go too crazy here, but like, I don't know if you win with that guy. And this isn't sour grapes. You can go find KS board things that I've said about this kid for the last probably 2 or 3 years that would indicate that what I'm saying is true, whether we got him or not. Yes, I would have been over the moon to get him because we were kind of desperate for that level of talent And again, we needed to swing for the fences and see if it worked, because there weren't like right now there's an absence of plan Bs. Like you missed on
Mhm.
Tyron Stokes, literally outside of waiting to see if Momcilovic doesn't go pro and then throwing the freaking golden bag at him. Like there isn't another guy at that level. And but like I'll tell you this, I would I would rather take Milan Momcilovic a million times over Tyron Stokes. Like
Oh yeah.
he just fits because he's the best shooter in the country. But like, I just have a lot of very, very serious questions about winning at the highest levels of college basketball with Tyron Stokes. He's talented. I would have done a lot of things to get him last night. But again, it was really only because there was an absence of other options. If we had locked up, two other top 10 high school prospects, or if there was, if Otega Owe was coming back, or if you'd already gotten Juke Harris or something, I would have told Tyron Stokes, see you, buddy. Don't need you. Bye-bye. So if you want, if you want a couple hot takes from this episode, I think that's kind of where I'm standing on this. Is like, no, I like. There's people that have texted me today, like, "Ooh, I think you dodged a bullet." Like, no, we didn't dodge a bullet because we need the talent. But like, if somehow something falls in our lap and we get that guy that can still move the needle, then I'm going to be glad that it's not Tyron Stokes, and I genuinely mean that.
Yeah, and I mean, at least to me, it just became painfully clear, not to get on a whole Tyron Stokes thing, but it became pretty painfully clear that he just didn't want to be at Kentucky. Like he was going to kind of do whatever it took to not play for Mark Pope, not be at Kentucky. A month ago, I was perfectly fine with Kentucky or with Tyron Stokes not going to Kentucky. Yesterday, it was annoying because, like you said, there was just like a month ago, there were more options. As of today, there aren't nearly as many options. So, yeah, you're kind of putting yourself in just a tough spot. But yeah, you take Milan every time. Like he's played multiple years in college. He's, how far did they go? Did they go to the Elite Eight last year? Or
Well,
did
they beat us.
get
They
knocked out in
definitely
the Sweet 16?
16.
I forget how far they went
Yeah.
exactly. Steven might know, but they were dealing with injuries too, like the whole way. So
right.
No, they lost in the Sweet 16 to Tennessee, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, because that could have been a rematch there with Kentucky and Tennessee in the Sweet 16 for a second straight year. So, but yeah, so that's a whole different story. Like it doesn't matter at this point because Tyron Stokes is going to Kansas. But like you said, there could still I will not be shocked if another big name pops up, whether it's a Milan or somebody else, and we'll just have to see if Kentucky can go and close on that. But anyways, with Njae, to kind of close things out on him, like we said, I do think he'll be better than Yelovich. I understand it's not a massively high bar to get to, but I do think that he can be a little bit more productive, just bring a little bit more to the floor than what Yelovich was able to bring. Because, Yelovich had that game against UNC where he was like the best defender on the floor, like had Caleb Wilson in hell for like the entire game. And then by the end of the season, he like couldn't stay in front of guys his own size. So I don't know what the whole deal was with there, if guys just kind of figure out how to attack him a little bit better. But, at least with Njae, I know that I'm going to get a much better athlete. And I think that's important right now because Yelovich just was not an athlete. And if he wasn't knocking down threes, it was like, okay, well, why is, he can't really do much out there if he's not knocking down a bunch of threes. The defensive rebounding was nice, but you're probably going to get that with Njae. And now you're also going to get, even if he's not knocking down threes, you can still rely on him to out jump everybody. So at least in that regard, I do feel a little bit more optimistic. And a lot of that is just hindsight's 2020. Like if I had to go back in time and, I could probably go watch our Zoom action from last year on Andrei Yelovich. And I'm sure I said similar things about, or who knows, I don't know, but regardless, he's going to be an interesting player. We have no idea what he's going to do at Kentucky. It's going to be fun to watch, though. I will say I'm interested to get to talk to him when he gets to UK and kind of just pick his brain about playing overseas and all that. So I actually am very excited about that, just to get to know him a little bit better. But Brandon, you got any other just takes you want to get off your chest right now? Not even Njae or Tyron Stokes related, or we'll do some stuff on Justin McBride. You got any big thoughts on him? I know Jerome Morton is still out there as a potential backup guard option. There's now 11 spots of the 15 filled, so you got 4 to play with. I'm not sure he'll fill all those remaining 4. I mean, I guess he could, but you probably still want to get at least 2 more guys that can be rotational players. you still really don't know who your starting three is going to be, unless, I mean, maybe it's just Cam Williams or maybe even Braden Hawthorne. But anything you want to talk about before we wrap up here?
No, I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how all this takes shape. The options are relatively limited, at least in terms of like high level needle movers. I think the only real hope for changing that is if a couple of these guys do end up not going to the draft, and then you get a couple of these kind of big fish names to sort of matriculate back and become available at the college level. Maybe there's a golden goose out there somewhere in the international waters that we're not aware of that could become available, but all that sort of gets tricky, especially as the calendar continues to move. So I think, probably backcourt depth and front court depth in terms of like getting a backup 5-man, which might be getting taken care of right now out in Israel.
As we speak in Israel.
What's his name? Morton. Is that the kid from Kentucky? The
John Morton.
Guard?
Yep.
Maybe that's your depth.
He'd be a great depth piece, I think. Yeah. I think he'd be a perfect third or fourth guard for you.
Right. So maybe he's your depth piece there in the backcourt. And then at that point, I think you're kind of just waiting. And it's like, hey, if we can throw the bag at somebody that's a star almost at really any position, you go try to get them. If not, then we'll kind of go to work with the 12 or 13 guys that we have and kind of see what happens. I mean, I think this whole off season was sort of about, it was either going to be better than last year. We were going to go into next year and we were going to be good and it was going to be fun. And hey, all right, Coach Pope kind of got some things figured out and maybe we're heading in the right direction, or it was all going to take care of itself. And right now I'm not ready to say which one of those two things has happened so far because we're not done yet. And I don't think it's fair to judge the product until it's over. I will say that I think right now there have been some misses and some flaws, and it has not gone great. I would not give it a good letter grade as of April 29th. But again, the game's not over. You're not out of the fight until you put the final roster on the website, like in August. And I'll kind of reserve some judgment for there because, again, I think it's going to take care of itself one way or another. And we'll either all be happy with how good Kentucky is, or we're probably going to be having different conversations next offseason of, changing who's in charge and going in a different direction.
Yeah, and Steven, if you can hear us, I might put you on the spot for a second, and just because we have like another 10 minutes. We usually go for an hour, so if we wrap up early, that's fine. But if you have a question, Steven, that you want to get off your chest about Njae or just anything about the roster in general, go ahead and throw that to us. I'm sure you've got at least something cooked up.
No, I got questions.
Let's give us your best one, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, well, you guys do the show so well that you answer some of my questions throughout the show, which is good. Do you think that Pope can get him under control where he's taking spot up threes and not the threes that we're seeing on tape? And if you can get a guy like Momcilovic, then what kind of role do you think you have, not just for Njae, but for the guy they signed yesterday, Justin McBride? Like, how do you fit in all these guys? Or is it just we're going to spread out the minutes like Pope has tried to do the last two seasons? So two-parter there. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, to answer the first part, what I'll say about this is, from some of the European guys that have been talking about Njae, is I've heard two different reporters from over there say that the coaching over there is tough. Like tough coaching. I don't think that's necessarily Mark Pope's style. So I'm interested to see how that dynamic works. Like maybe Njae responds really well to it, and he's able to lock in, and Pope can get him under control. That's just probably something that you'll have to figure out when it actually happens. I'm sure Brandon has maybe a little, or can expand on that a little bit more. But to your next point, like I think Milan is, like, I remember there was a tweet, I forget who it was. It was one of the UK accounts, or someone I like at least. On Twitter that was saying, like, if you want to, you can get like a big three, like, or not a big three, but like the three spot, the small forward can be like a bigger guy. And I think you can only do that if that guy's really, really good, like NBA level good, like a Thomas Hauger or Yaxel Lendenborg. Milan is probably a guy that you can make work at the three. So you just kind of plug him in there, and he's your starting 3. Then Cam Williams comes off the bench. Then you probably have or hell, you could put Cam Williams at the 4 if you really wanted to. Then have Njaye and McBride kind of share minutes, or have those two, or Njaye starts, if McBride comes off the bench. I mean, I do think that Pope's going to spread out the minutes again. Like, I would not be shocked if Njaye is averaging 22 minutes and McBride's averaging 18 minutes a game, and Njaye's starting games and McBride closes games. Like, it could just be, that's basically what he did with Mo Diabate and Yelovich last season. Was Yelovich started and Mo closed, and they played the same amount of minutes. So that's kind of how I would answer that. Brandon, you got anything to add to it? I like that question.
Yeah, I would just say that I think for these two guys specifically, as it pertains to McBride and Njaye, going into it, I probably look at it as a little bit of a relatively even split, which we kind of saw last year between Diabate and Yelovich, and they do bring different things. Like, McBride has a little bit more physicality to him. They both can shoot threes, at least in theory. So that's a positive to have, and maybe a little bit more shooting at the 4 than we've had so far in the Coach Pope era. But I think you're gonna piece those guys together, and some sort of a 25-15 or straight up 20-20 sort of split, at least to begin. And like I said, if one guy separates from the other, then you'll see that flip around as needed. But I think they can gel pretty well together with their skill sets, and having some physicality in one of them, having some skill on the perimeter with another. And I'm anxious to dive more into McBride to kind of get a better feel for all that. Coming out of James Madison, I'm not going to act like I watched a ton of his games and have a super good feel for it. But, just like Njaye, even at this point, with what I've been able to put together. So there certainly remains some unknowns for that position. But I talk a lot about how I really value shooting in the front court. I think this is the first time where at the 4 spot we now have 2 guys who I'm like, hey, yeah, like I want these guys shooting catch and shoot threes. So from that standpoint, I am really excited about the 2 guys that we brought in from that standpoint.
And I do think there's potential to, because like right now, who's the backup center? If it's not the guy from Israel that Mark Pope's looking at, who I think is only like 6'8" right now, like is Reese Potter technically, like, he's kind of the backup center right now. I don't think he's a guy you want playing a bunch of minutes. So I do see situations where Njaye is playing the 5. You put McBride at the 4. You put Cam Williams at the 3, and there's some shooting right there and some space. And hell, you put Jerome Morton. Like, if this is your backup lineup, you've got Zoom Diallo with Jerome Morton, and then the 3 we just mentioned. Like, there's spacing there, there's shooting there. So that could be something that Mark Pope looks at as well. Because Njaye has kind of been plugged in as this power forward, but like, he's 6'11", 210 pounds. Like, I don't know how that'll work against, a Ruben Chinyelu or someone. Is he coming back? Actually, I don't even know if he's coming back to Florida.
So.
I forgot if he declared or not. But, like those big dudes, I don't know how that would work. But it's something I could see happen as well. So thanks for the question, Stephen Peak. All right. But anyways, and Steven is actually no longer in the studio, so I'm sure he lost his Wi-Fi or something, just happened to crap out on him right now. But regardless, I think that's all we've got today, Brandon, unless you've got any just last second thoughts.
Nope.
Good. All right. Well, we will do this again. Like I said, it might be Friday. It might be early next week. We'll just kind of see what what kind of our schedules are and the timelines for getting, we want to watch. I assume there will be more James Madison tape out there than there is for Crema Vanoli or whatever, Vanilla Cream, whatever his Italian league's name is. So we will do that soon. We'll let you all know. But otherwise, thanks everyone for coming. I need to remember to do this, Brandon, because Steven told us last time. Remember, what is it again? I need everyone right now. Please go hit the like button. This is huge. This is really big for Steven. It helps him out a lot. Go like. We've got a lot of comments in here as well. Thanks everyone for joining. We're over 3,000.
Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. 300 people in here right now. So make sure to like for sure. Leave a comment if you haven't. Hit the subscribe button. That really helps out Steven. So he'd really appreciate it. And so would we. So with that, I've been Zach. Steven's back here as well. I've been Zach. This is Brandon. We will see you all next time. Go Cats.